career opportunities and motivation for studying different things. So one thing which I forgot to tell you is the companies are looking for the candidates who are comfortable to become uncomfortable. So comfortably uncomfortable. So that is the kind of situation which the companies want in the future. So uh, being uncomfortable should become a habit for that recruits. So they should be able to work in any kind of situation, difficult scenarios, or even when time is not in favor of us, under difficult conditions. So whether they can perform under pressure. So that is the kind of thing which they are looking. Okay, so without wasting much time, so I will show what is there. And by the way, VIT has called for vaccinating all the faculty. So last week they have given for above 45, and yesterday, today, and tomorrow they are vaccinating everyone, all the staff, research scholars, faculties, family members. So whoever wants, they can take the vaccine. So that is the situation. Okay. So we were discussing about this antenna
When did you get
subsystem.
the vaccine, sir?
Yeah, tomorrow I am taking. Um, yeah. No, what was your question?
That's just did you take vaccine or not?
Yeah, tomorrow because after that we have to take rest. So I don't want to take today. Okay, so antenna subsystem is critical part of the satellite design. So we have studied it. I have told you many properties and many parameters of the antenna and what are the different types of antenna also I have told you. So here I will quickly conclude that. So it is a critical part of the spacecraft design. Okay. So So large antennas are not favored. So why do we want large antennas is they have large aperture. So if you have large aperture, then the amount of collected energy or the energy that it can receive will be more. So that is one motivation for going for large antennas. But at the same time, those things will not fit into the rocket nozzle or into the nose of the rocket. So it's kind of trade-off. So with the smaller antennas only, we should be able to obtain the desired gain and directivity. So so we want compact antennas. Then all this we have seen, like there can be different types of antennas, and the basic one which we are aiming for the global coverage should at least have the beam width of 17 degrees. So otherwise, if we want to cover only a particular portion on the Earth surface, then we can go for different kinds of antennas. So that's what we have seen. So here there is a reflector antenna. This is the global beam. Generally, we go for the horn antenna if we want to achieve the global coverage. If you want to achieve the regional coverage, then you can use this reflector, parabolic reflector antennas. And then suppose if you want to change your dynamically, if you want to able to change the response of the antenna array, like suppose one time you want to focus the beam on this part of the world, then tomorrow let us say this antenna you want to focus it on some other place. So then dynamically by adjusting the phase shifts of these antenna elements, we can change its like the we can point the beam in different directions. So generally we have studied there is a main beam, so you can steer the main beam into any direction which you want by adjusting the phase shifts of the antennas in the antenna array. So as the name itself suggests that it is array, so definitely there are more than uh, one element. So two or more elements are there. So and they are phased antenna. So like each of the antenna elements has different phase, and by changing that phase we can dynamically create different beams. So like suppose if you take a set of phases or weights, it may point to one direction. But if you change the feeding, if you change the phases of those antenna elements, then the direction may change. So you can point the main beam into some other direction. So if you want this kind of dynamic control where you want to provide coverage to different regions on a temporary basis, then we have to go for this phased array antenna. So those are the things. So then this gain, reflectivity, all that we know. Uh, and this is also one important thing which I have told you in the last class, reciprocity. So like reciprocity is whatever is possible at the transmitter is also possible at the receiver, as the antenna follows the reciprocity principle. So then there are some details about that. So all this theory we cannot, yeah. So here the four types of antennas which I have told you, wire antennas. So generally wire antennas, they have more spread, like their energy spread into different directions. Like the directivity is very less. Uh, Directivity is very less, yeah. So directivity is less means the beam is very broad. So they are able to cover large, like their beam is spread out in the space, three-dimensional space. So they are very much suitable for the initial stage, even before that is launched into the orbit. So during the tracking and monitoring phase, these kind of monopoles and they have kind of omnidirectional pattern. So if they have omnidirectional pattern, that means they are able to receive energy from any direction in the 360 degrees. So like during the tracking phase, we are not sure when the rocket has different stages of the rocket you have studied. So after that final stage, even before this satellite has gone to its desired orbit, so even before its antennas are deployed and the solar panels are deployed, so even before that we want some sort of communication with this satellite. So for that, these omnidirectional antennas are used. So if you see here, wire antennas are used to provide communication for the TTCM. So they want the omnidirection because we are not sure of the orientation, like during the, after it is launched into the desired orbit, then only that attitude and orbit control system comes into play. During the attitude control system, our main aim is to point the antennas correctly towards the desired air station. So but even that even before it comes into picture, or even before it comes into play, we are not sure what will be the orientation of this satellite with respect to the earth station. So it makes sense to have an omnidirectional pattern at the receiving antenna, so that wherever our earth station is there, these satellite antennas are capable of achieving or receiving the signals from any direction. So yeah. So even then they are telling it is difficult to achieve the desired radiation pattern because there may be some nulls in the antenna radiation pattern. So then for global coverage, horn antennas have to be used. So what is horn? It is a flared waveguide. So how to obtain, so all the parameters of the horn antenna we have seen. Like if I show you that day slide, you will remember all the things. So horn and reflectors are examples of aperture antennas. So they are like starting in a waveguide and ending as a antenna. So they are flared sections of waveguides, and it says here like we cannot get narrow beam widths below 10 degrees and about 23 dB gain with horn antennas. So that is one limitation, but even that is again variable based on how much size and shape you are taking. So then reflector antennas, all this will come very quickly. So reflector antennas are that parabolic reflector which we see in our DTH kind of things. So that what is the principle behind that I have told you. Like it will convert the spherical wavefronts into plane wavefronts after reflecting from that parabolic surface. So then phased array antennas are like if you want flexibility in the design, then we go for this array antennas. And yeah, so these formulas are there. We will just quickly let you know what is the importance of this formula. I was talking about these slides where I have told you about all the antenna basics, how does that radiation occur, and what are the different antenna parameters. So if you have low directivity, that means this beam is very broad. So it's almost like radiating in all the directions. So if it's even in the bottom also, if it's like this, suppose if it's like this, so exactly it won't be spherical like this, but because it's an isotropic radiator and it is an ideal antenna, so we cannot expect an ideal antenna, but for practical antennas we can get a omnidirectional coverage which is looking like 8. So in the three dimensional if you draw 8, so that will be the achievable pattern using the practical antennas. So those we call them as the omnidirectional. So real omnidirectional is like this. It should offer the equal coverage in all the 360 degrees. But since this is an ideal antenna, we can just expect some bend in between this. So like dumbbell shape we can expect, to be precise. So then these were the different types of antenna which I told you on the last class. In like this is the horn antenna which is suitable for the uh, global coverage. Like this is on the same principle of that audio loudspeakers which we use in festivals or functions. So like big loudspeakers are installed in the streets. So that one. So that is for sound. The aim of that thing is to uh, spread the sound in different directions. So here also the same aim is there. The electromagnetic waves have to be spread into different directions. So then these dipoles and folded dipoles. Then this is the parabolic antenna which I was telling. So from this feed, so till this here it is a transmission line. Slowly it is converted to waveguide, and then this feed horn launches spherical wavefronts onto this reflecting surface, which is parabolic in nature. And after that, whatever is coming out, those will be the plane wavefronts. So all this we have seen. So then coming to this, so here I will quickly show you the things which are given in this book. So what is the problem with the large antennas? So they are difficult to mount, but why we need large antennas is because if you have a large antenna, then it provides more gain. So what is antenna gain? Like how much better it is in a particular direction compared to the isotropic antenna. So isotropic antenna radiates equally in all directions. So how good is your antenna in a particular direction? That is the gain of that antenna. So different all satellites need a variety of antennas. So different variety. So, but this one, the omnidirectional antenna is used for the TTC and M operation. So, you know what is the TTC and M? Tracking, telemetry, and command. So, during the initial launching portion, so even before it is injected in its desired orbit, so these omnidirectional antennas are of large help. So then slowly he has gone into the, if you want to cover this global beam coverage, then this beam width of the antenna should at least be 17.34 degrees. If it's more than that, then the energy will go out of this. So some of the energy will be wasted. And if you have a narrower beam than this 17 degrees, so then you cannot offer the global coverage. So you may offer till only here. So cone will be very small. So then these are the different kinds of so he's saying basically that for each satellite there may be different kinds of antennas. So like these are the reflector antennas, parabolic reflector antennas. So then there is some horn antenna and there are also dipoles. Okay. So then this is how that parabolic reflector antenna looks like. So we know this. We have seen many times. Then this is how the horn antenna looks like. It's a flayed section of the waveguide. So till here it's like waveguide. After this it's flayed. Deliberately it is flayed to spread out the signal. So then this is how an omnidirectional antenna looks like. So if you see all these textbooks and research papers, they have to actually write to these people and they have to obtain the permission. Simply we cannot use their figures at our will. So we should obtain prior permission from them, and same thing goes for us also. If it now it's educational purpose, so suppose if I want to make all these things in a YouTube video, then first I have to obtain the permission from this Varsha Agarwal that I want to use some of your pictures. That is how copyright is important. Okay, so then what are the different antenna parameters, gain, all these things we have seen. So here you can study them, you can read them properly. And the beam width is related to the power gain using this formula. So 4 pi divided by this angle. So this angle is a product of the resolution in azimuth direction and elevation direction. So suppose if the antenna is one dimensional, then we have only azimuth direction. But if it's offering two dimensional or three dimensional coverage, then we have this both azimuth and elevation. So once I show you numerically, you will understand what is this. So then if it's a power pattern, then we look out for a zero point 0.5 half power points, similar to that amplifiers. When you want to measure the half power point of the response, so you may take the power pattern or the field pattern. So if you take the field pattern, you are looking for that 1 by root 2 thing, that is 0.707. So if it's voltage, so this electric field can be compared to voltage. So if you want to measure the half power beam width using this field strength graph, you have to see that 1 by root 2 point. If you have the power pattern, then you have to see the half power points, and the distance between this point and this point gives the half power beam width, which is also related to the directivity. Then what is polarization, what is cross polarization? So then there is something called as polarization loss. So if the polarization of the transmitted wave is different from the polarization of the received antenna, then there will be some polarization loss. So this again we will get it in the fifth module. Yeah, so this is the main formula. So gain is equal to 4 pi a by lambda square. So a is the antenna aperture, but generally what happens is uh, the full surface of the antenna won't be illuminated properly, so there won't be uniform illumination. So when there is no uniform illumination, then we have to go for the effective aperture. So instead of the whole aperture, only the effective aperture is there, which is equal, which is a fraction of this whole area. So whole area of the antenna may not be able to receive the signal. So how much is it actively receiving? The fraction of that, that is called as effective aperture. So effective aperture is given by this eta into a, where eta is the aperture efficiency, or how much useful portion of that aperture is there. Like suppose if we have a dish antenna where we have our DTH or all that, so the paraboloid is very much lot of area is there, but in that how much is actively receiving, so that is the effective aperture, which is a fraction of the total area. So this, if you substitute in this formula, you will get 4 pi eta into a divided by lambda square. Okay. So then why this parabolic has become very famous is, so there is a property for this. So if you listen to that property, your mind will be, you will be surprised. Your mind will blow off. So why they have selected this parabolic shape for this reflector? So feed is here. Feed is put at the focal point of the parabola. Okay, so the horn feed or even this secondary reflector. So this is the primary feed. This is the secondary reflector from where it's reflecting to the main reflector, sub-reflector. This is the sub-reflector. So now this people, they have put it willfully at the focal point of the parabola, so that what happens is, this is the directrix of the parabola. So if you remember, where is the directrix? Yeah, this one. So this is the directrix of the parabola, and this is the focal point. So if you put the feed at the focal point of the parabola, then the property of the directrix is like each point from the reflector surface has constant distance from the this one, directrix. So based on that principle, whatever spherical wavefronts were thrown onto that surface, after getting reflected, they all become plane wavefronts because of the fact that this is at the same distance from all the points on the parabola. So this is how the spherical wavefronts get converted into the linear wavefronts. Okay, or the, what is this, plane wavefronts. So I will show you that. So if the source of radiation is placed at its focal point, the waves traveling after reflection from different points will reach the directrix in phase due to equal path lengths. So for any point on its surface, the sum of the distances of this point from the focal point and the directrix is constant. So from the focal point here to here, or from the directrix, so both the distances are same. So based on, since the distances are same, uh, they are like in phase, so because of the equal path lengths involved, so they all, whatever all these reflected things are there, they will be in same phase. So that's why we are getting this plane wavefronts. So similarly, on the reception, the opposite things happens. The waves approaching the antenna parallel to the axis get focused onto the feed antenna. So so suppose from this direction some waves are coming like this. They all get reflected from the reflector and get refocused into the focal point, and from there it will be received inside. But suppose the waves are approaching from some other direction, like off axis direction, so they will focus at a different point rather than on the focal point. So therefore they are diffused, so they won't be received, and we don't want to receive them also. So such a phenomena makes this antenna very much highly directional one. So this is the principle behind this parabolic reflectors. So they willfully put the feed at the focal point of the parabola, and the shape itself is chosen as a parabolic shape because of this principle that all the points on this reflecting surface, they are at the same distance from the directrix. So because of that, the waves need to travel the same amount of distance, and therefore they are in phase when they reach this directrix. So then what he has done, he has taken that formula of the effective aperture, gain is equal to this one, and for the kind of parabolic reflecting surfaces, he has told that area is equal to uh, d square. So exactly it will be like, if you want the exact value, it will be something like pi d square by 4, something like that. So then, uh, yeah, so d by lambda. So what he has done, he has taken some 60% aperture efficiency and pi square value and got this 70 into lambda by t. So the 3 dB bandwidth, how do you get the 3 dB bandwidth is from here. 4 pi by that formula was there, no? Yeah, this one. 4 pi divided. So gain has two formulas. One is 4 pi into AE divided by lambda square, and this one is 4 pi by this one. So if you equate both of them, then you will get like this. So which is very much highly directional. So then there is a the focal point is also important parameter. So there is a formula for that in terms of the diameter of the parabolic surface. So front to back ratio is also important here. So if you do not properly maintain that focal point, then there will be a lot of back radiation which is going in the unnecessary direction. So all that we have to consider when we are designing this antenna. So then this is the Cassegrain feed. So feed is here, then sub reflector is here, and then the same kind of operation takes place. So why we need a secondary feed, all that is explained there. So then horn antenna is like so here they are talking about that maximum power transfer. So energy coupling of the transmission line to the atmosphere can be enhanced, and the radiation efficiency can be improved by opening out the open end of the line and straightening the conductors to take the shape of a dipole. So some things. So from transmission line, same thing they are putting for the waveguides also, and that's why that flaring is done so that the impedance matching between the free space and the load will be equal and maximum power can be transferred. So then helical antenna, you need not worry much about it. Lens antenna also. Then this phased array antenna is important. So, so the main advantage of the phased array antenna is that the beam can be steered electronically without any physical motion or physical movement. There is no need of mechanical steering. So generally, suppose if the antenna is radiating in this direction, and but you want to point this main lobe into some other direction, like let us say you want to point this main lobe in this direction. So then uh, either we have to mechanically orient the platform towards that 30 degrees, or there is no other option. But if you have a phased array, then by changing the phases of those antenna elements, we can steer the beam electronically. Through electronic means no need of moving that platform. So the platform will be stable, but still this steering can be achieved. That is called soft steering or electronic steering. So how do they do that is, for each of the elements in the antenna array, if you provide different phases, then you can achieve that beam steering. So there are different types of arrays in that. Uh, so basically phased array has that flexibility of multiple spot beams. Wherever you want the beam, you can design it according to that. Uh, this one, right? So then there are some numericals, very small numericals. You can study them. So what is the antenna aperture? What is the gain of the antenna? So this is just they're converting from the degrees to the radians, and then they use this formula. So because in this formula we have to use the radians. So then they get the gain, and we know one more relation. Gain is equal to this much.
జీకేలో కాఫీ కొన్నాడు.
Okay. Okay, so similarly, some problems are given. You can go through them. I will make this PDF available. So not so important, but it's good to know these calculations because it will be useful again in the fifth unit. All this formula.
Sir, when will be the quiz one, sir?
Yeah, this one when you want to write. So Wednesday you will write because Monday is holy, Friday is Good Friday. So only Wednesday is left out. Okay, so then the next topic is space qualification and equipment reliability. So space qualification is like before selecting the devices for the satellite design, it has to go through some of the checking or testing phase. So if you see the thermal control subsystem, it should be able to tolerate the extreme temperatures, and it also should be able to so during the period of eclipse, space acts as an infinite heat sink and surface temperatures of the satellite will fall towards absolute zero. So absolute zero is like how much? Minus 273 degrees Celsius. So that's very much extreme temperature. So before selecting, so that is extreme temperature electronics. So there is a separate category called as extreme temperature electronics. So those kind of components will be selected for this kind of satellite missions. So then they have to see the reliability, and then they have to also see the quality of the equipment, and there is also something called as stress testing. So sometimes these in DRDO or ISRO, if you see Bangalore, so the objects are like subjected to stress testing. So like from 40 feet height, it is suddenly dropped down to the ground. Then they will see whether it is breaking or not, or they will put sudden cooling through this adiabatic chambers and all that, and they will see whether it's able to tolerate the extreme changes. So change is like from 0 to minus 273. If it's going in 10 days, then it's not a problem, but if it's going within half an hour, so adiabatic changes with rapid cooling, the all those they will see the mechanical components, electrical components, vibration and shock testing for the, so they will create the vacuum temperature or vacuum conditions and subject these things to this vibration and shock testing, and all the package also they will do. So the thermal model contains all the electronic packages. So with that also, if they put this vibration and shock testing, whether the things are breaking or they are intact, all that thing rigorous testing will be performed. And reliability is like how often the device is failing. So this is the starting of the device where there is a lot of probability of failure. At the start, it's highly probable that it will be failing, and as it settles down, so the chance of failing reduces, and throughout the lifetime of the satellite, it's stable, like the probability of failure is very less, and when it is reaching to the end of the life, again the probability of failure is increasing. So based on all the, so it follows the bathtub curve. So any electronic component follows this bathtub curve. So how do you finalize the components is after extensive testing under the worst case scenarios. Okay, so most bad scenarios will be created and it will be tested in that kind of situations. So if it's able to pass that testing, then it's almost likely to perform well or survive in the space environment. So then this is the same thing. Very small PPT is available. What is reliability and redundancy? So generally we go for redundancy in order to increase the reliability. So, so suppose if you want to get up morning 4 o'clock compulsory tomorrow, so you feel better to have 2 or 3 alarms. So that is redundancy. Why you want to do that is you want to increase the reliability of getting up quickly. You don't want to afford to miss those alarms, so that's why you're keeping many alarms. That is one example. So space qualification, the same thing which I told you. It is all tested and all that. The same thing here. Yeah, so it's also same thing. So then there is a topic like frequency modulation in satellite communication. So here it's only one slide, but if you see this textbook, there is an entire chapter devoted to that. So so they start from that amplitude modulation, and it's all like, yeah, here. So it's very much exhaustive in the textbook. What are the common signals which are transmitted using satellite communication? Is voice signals, data signals, and video signals. So then they go for that, all that AM. What is AM? What are the equations for AM? What are the sites? So all this you have studied in ACS. So actually you don't need. What is modulation index? What are the components in a AM wave? How much is the power in AM? How much is in sidebands and how much is in the carrier? Then what is the sideband suppression? What is single sideband? How to recover those DSBC signals using this synchronous demodulator? And what is single sideband? What is vestigial sideband? All that is here. So this is, I think, vestigial sideband. For TV transmission, they have given the example. So all this you don't need here. Then FM also you have studied in the that ACS subject. So FM is like the amplitude is kept constant, the envelope is constant, and only the frequency variations in the carrier can be seen. So if you see the B figure, the carrier is of constant frequency, but in the third signal, C waveform, some parts of the carrier it is broad and some parts it is very narrow, so we are getting the frequency variations. So then this frequency deviation, how much it is, what is its effect, what is the modulation index, what is the spectrum of this wideband FM and narrowband FM. So you know, for the wideband FM, this Bessel's function should be taken, J naught of beta or J naught of MF. So then these Bessel functions, that table we have to see to determine the bandwidth and all that. Then what is difference between narrowband and FM? Then how much noise is there in FM signals? Is it better than the AM? In what sense it is better than AM? And this pre-emphasis, de-emphasis also you have done experiments like the higher frequencies are susceptible to more noise. So before sending, you boost them up, and at the receiver you recover them or deboost. So pre-emphasis graph is like this. So after 2 kilohertz roughly, so signals about 2 kilohertz to 15 kilohertz, they are susceptible to noise in the communication channel. So even before transmission, we boost up those frequencies which are about 2 kilohertz. So this curve, if you see, after the F1 frequency, so that F1 is the cutoff frequency. After that, you are providing the boost to all the signal, all the frequencies, and at the receiver you have to perform the reverse one. Then what are the methods to generate the FM? So it's this varactor diode is taken. So if you change the voltage applied to this varactor diode, its capacitance will change. So if you are putting that capacitor in a tank circuit, the root LC will change. So the generated frequency will also change automatically. So that is this reactance modulator. Then for wideband, you need to go for that Armstrong method. Then detection of FM, slope detector, balance slope detector, and so many ratio detector. So of course we did not yeah, all those basically you don't need all this because you studied in ACS subject already, whether you have studied or not. Last winter you have passed it somehow, right? So this is the basic thing. So till here it is that frequency modulation, but in our slide that there is only one slide. After that it goes into digital modulation, which is not much. Even that also you have studied. DPCM delta modulation you have studied in digital communications. Okay, so I think I will stop here. So yeah, so you want to